The transformation of college football, not just the title of Ethan Young's book that is out today. Go grab your copy, but the transformation of college football is something that is actively happening. From private equity to college football playoff expansion, salary caps, revenue sharing, a ton of things to consider, whether you are a university president, AD, GM, head coach. Everybody involved is going to have to get in alignment. Yes, we hit on that and so much more as Ethan Young of the 33rd team joins us here today on Scouting the League. Everybody, and welcome to Scouting the League. Really excited to jump in today's conversation with Ethan Young of the 33rd team. But before we do, make sure you head over, like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you are listening and watching. Whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that video portion over on YouTube, hit those buttons, and most importantly, share this with a friend. If you are interested in football the way that we are here on this podcast, which you're listening, so I'd imagine you are. Somebody else in your life probably is as well. Make sure you send this episode to them and then tell them to check out all of our archives, whether it is our daily episodes where we cover everything from quarterbacks, jump into the draft room with some great scouts, whether we're talking with great guests like Stuart Jenkins of Blue Maca or Lori and Jill over at the Inactive Company, former GMs, former personnel people, analytics, data, a little bit of everything in between. We are all football all the time between myself and Neil Stratton, bringing you everything you need to know about football. I, of course, am Rodrik David, former NFL scout, 6 years with Falcons, 1 year with the Tennessee Titans. I am at Right Step ADV on X. Go check me out, give me a follow. Check out my website, rsafootball.com. That is Right Step Advising, where I am going to help you out. If you have any questions about the nature of football, from scouting to salary cap to what it takes to get into the industry, head over to rsafootball.com. Hit me a message there. Hit me a message on X as well. Neil Stratton, he is all things football. InsideTheLeague.com is his website, at Inside the League on X, as well as check out his blog, SucceedInFootball.com. Neil is the go-to source if you are going to be an agent studying for that agent exam, or you're a new agent. Get signed up for any of Neil's awesome classes over at InsideTheLeague.com. Between Neil and I, we will have whatever answers you need to make sure you have a successful first year as an agent. And beyond that, so much more that we can do in the football industry. For scouts out there, make sure you are checking out thescoutingcommunity.com for all the resources that may not quite be accessible for you, but you need anyway. Not a union, but going to come alongside and help you in whatever way we and I individually can. Been in the room, been in the grind, been on the road. I know some of the spots that scouts need help with and perhaps could use a hand on the outside. Let me do it. 100% anonymous, but always here to help scouts in the industry. Go check out thescoutingcommunity.com. If you're an aspiring scout, go check that out as well. Thescoutingcommunity.com for aspiring scouts. Get signed up. We will start going through that process to make sure it's not just an aspiring scout, but someday you are a scout as well. As we get into today's conversation with Ethan Young, former college GM, now with the 33rd team, has his book out, The Transformation of College Football. We get into all things college and NFL football, how it's going to marry.
All right, Ethan Young is our guest this week. Ethan, we appreciate you coming on. Welcome aboard, buddy.
Thanks, Neil. I appreciate it.
Now, I've known Ethan, I think maybe kind of when your days at UCLA were ending. We've kind of fleshed out the relationship since. We talk probably every couple of months, and sometimes a lot more than that. Give us kind of your backstory. If I was going to go to your LinkedIn page, what would I see? And tell us more about why you decided to go down this troubled road that Rodrik and I are both on, and so many other crazy people. How did you decide to go into football and kind of make it your life, Ethan?
Yeah. Well, Neil, way back in the day, I grew up in a sports family. I was the son of a college basketball coach. My uncle played tight end for Mike Martz in college in 1978. I played every sport I could for as long as I could. But I knew early on in my career, being 6 foot with thin shoulders and stiff hips, that my career was going to be off the field rather than as a player. Uh, and kind of always had that goal and vision for myself of being involved in sports and coaching personnel, et cetera. I knew that was my future. I got in the business right away when I stopped playing. I started scouting on my own in college. Started researching measurables, player evaluation on my own, and putting stuff out, building my own big boards, reading, learning. And I did that for a couple of years. And I was very fortunate to get an opportunity to do pro scouting for Bleacher Report off of that. That was my first kind of professional gig in football and in scouting. And that was, the dog days of turning on the tape. I graded all guards and centers in the NFL, and I had to have all my grades in by Tuesday night. So between Sunday and Tuesday, I had to watch every NFL game and every guard and center and grade them and write a report. And so I basically worked completely from Sunday evening till Tuesday night, and then had the rest of the week off and slept and tried to recover to not sleep again Sunday through Tuesday.
Was that a sustainable wage at that point, Ethan? Do you recall?
No, come on, not even close. So, but I loved it, and I knew kind of sacrificing, like, hey, this has got to cut my teeth and learn the business, and the tape will teach you a lot of things, right? So I was fortunate to be able to do that for a couple of seasons, while I was kind of paving my way in life. And one of the NFL coaches that I had known, I put a lot of stuff out at the time on measurables and player evaluation, and I connected with a position coach in the NFL and helped kind of consult and advise him on player acquisition in terms of, hey, what should you look for at your position? And we had built a pretty good relationship. And he said, hey, I had worked at the NFL league office. There's a job open I think you'd be a great fit for. And right around that time, I entered the NFL Network scouting competition run by Daniel Jeremiah. It was the first one he ever did. And I actually won it. So I had a little bit of momentum in the NFL building, and between those two connections, I was able to land a job at Next Gen Stats for a real full-time opportunity in football, where I was brought in to do research and help bridge the gap between the engineers, because they had a really, really smart technical engineer team there, and then bridge the gap between them and the clubs, as well as the broadcast partners. Like we had John Gruden with ESPN, Tony Romo with CBS, Brakeman with Fox, Chris Collinsworth at NBC, all partnered with us from a football perspective. And a lot of the difficulty was at the time, they just wanted to throw speed and distance at the broadcast team. John Gruden wanted to talk about 12 personnel, right? And so it's like, how do we connect our data to what he wants to talk about? And I remember my first meeting with Gruden. I was like, hey, John, you want to talk about 12 personnel in the Falcons versus the Saints matchup this week? But we can tell you through charting the whole league with our tracking information that the Falcons run the third most 12 personnel in the league, and they have the most touchdowns out of it. And here's a leaderboard to support your point. He's like, wow, that's great, right? So like that was a big initiative for us of like connecting with the team and figuring how to use our data to tell these stories rather than just, hey, this guy runs this fast, or this guy ran this many yards on a play. I got to create a lot of cool statistics there, and it was an early time in 2017 and advise on a lot of that stuff. And then shortly after that, Coach Kelly got the job at UCLA, and was instantly intrigued when he got that opportunity, and we connected. And he ended up bringing me over as director of strategic intelligence. And what that job was, basically, I was the advanced scout. I was in-game management aide. So, clock management, 2-point conversions, fourth down, special personnel projects as well. I was the personnel projects guy. I did all around the country, teach tapes for game prep, things like that. So I was wearing a lot of different hats. We went through our first year there, and then after that, I was promoted to director of player personnel, where I oversaw the roster for 5 years. I think he recognized right away that I was a personnel guy, kind of through and through. So we had a great run there. We don't need to kind of run through that whole thing, and all of that's very public. We led a long rebuild, got up to number 7 in the country in 2022. Really proud of the work we did there. We won 28 games in 4 years, including a 1 year, 7-game COVID season in there. So, sent 22 players to the NFL. Very, very happy with what we did there. But these days, after Coach Kelly departed last year, I joined the 33rd team, where Mike Tannenbaum and I partner to run our advisory services division. We launched it last year, when I kind of joined. We work with several Power 4 schools, advising them on revenue sharing. We've also specialized in executive search at the NFL and NCAA levels. We've done searches in both capacities. And the cool thing we're really pushing right now is we have built an interactive tool with access to all the deal flow we get as consultants. So we've had access to over 700 revenue sharing deals, both in agency partnerships and our clients. And what we've done is we've built a platform that's taken all those deals. We've charted the player's position, their role. Are they a starter, a backup? Who is competing for those players in terms of offers? What are the other schools' budgets? And have this interactive tool where our clients can go see the going rate on a player. They can say, hey, this is a quarterback. We view him as a backup. We're competing against Baylor and TCU for the kid. What does this market look like? And it spits out a number and a range. So that's kind of what we're pushing right now. And I also recently wrote a book in tandem with our advisory offerings called The Transformation of College Football. I'm proud to say that recently hit the #1 bestseller in sports law category in Amazon in first month of release. So that's been great. But, it's been really fun and engaging, kind of going from in the building every day to kind of a big picture view around college football and really football as a whole.
All right.
Ethan,
So go ahead, Rodrik.
Neil, it's my turn. Usually you're the one jumping in on me and I get to do it this week. It's a fascinating journey because while it's always football, and again, personnel coaching, again, you're around the game, you're in a building, but did a lot of different things within football. And it seems like not only with athletes on the field, but people that want to get into football. It's like, no, I'm going to be a scout. I only want to scout. I'm going to do scouting stuff. And your journey is very antithetical to that, which I think is fantastic. I think that's the way to go. What advice are you giving to people, and what did you learn and experience as you were going through that? Maybe it made it a little tougher. Hey, I have no idea what I'm doing with this project. I've just got to figure it out and move forward. A ton of value in that. But how are you navigating that? What advice are you giving to people? It's like, hey, just get with a football team somewhere and figure out how to do really good work, and you'll find your spot.
It's a great question, Rodrik. Like, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to two things. And I've, advised some young people that used to work for me on this. I think one, you have to figure out how to add value, right? And get pelts on the wall in terms of real achievements you've brought to the table, and find ways, whatever that looks like and whatever opportunities you're given, right? If you're dogmatic, I'm just a scout, I'm just a coach, it's going to limit you from potential upside, right? You got to put yourself in position to get lucky and be prepared enough for when that comes to execute on it, right? And, maybe Chip Kelly never returns my call, right? And I don't go to UCLA. And, I had never worked in college football. He had to take a chance on me, right? I had to get lucky, and I'm very fortunate I got that opportunity, but I was really prepared for it, right? And I had spent years in my mind preparing for that opportunity. So to me, that's kind of the first thing is you got to be open to opportunities to add value and get pelts on the wall, right? Like that's really, I think, central to it. And the second thing is, I want to find the right way to say this, but you got to add value, right? And not be dogmatic. But I think you also have to really be open to learning, right? Because it puts you in, like, I know quarterback play better than I ever thought I would, because Dana Bible was our quarterback coach at UCLA, and he needed someone to help him run his computer. So I was in every meeting my first year, right? And you talk about a guy that was in the room when the West Coast offense was invented, right? Like, an incredible opportunity to soak up knowledge, right? So it's like, did I want to sit there and run the computer? Like, no, that was not what I signed up to do, but like, what an opportunity, right? So I think you just got to be willing to, even when you're not adding value, soak up the value of being in the building, right? Like, hey, that's great. Like, that's really strong, and I want to add value, but like, what tangential value can I get from this opportunity in a way that's not disruptive, right? You shouldn't be working in equipment your first day and go up to the GM or the head coach and try to shake his hand, right? You got to know your time and place. And I think that's the key second thing is you got to know your strengths, right? Like, I know my strengths. I'm really strategic. I'm really competitive. I can relate to people. Like, put me in a position to do that, whether I'm scouting, whether I'm coaching, I'm really happy, right? And I'm going to be successful, right? So I think if you know your strengths, and I read a book called Strength-Based Leadership where I got a lot of this stuff from, Rodrik. I think you can apply that in any area in football, and you're going to have success.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ethan, again, the book is called The Transformation of College Football, How Revenue Sharing Will Change the Game. One more shot.
Look at that, Neil. You got it in hand. I love
Oh
it.
yeah, I wish I could say I'd finished it. I haven't had a chance to yet. Just too many balls in the air. No pun intended. But the thing that I'm passionate about, Ethan, and maybe you share this passion because you wrote this book. I go and I speak to DPPs and GMs, and very famously, we had a big event at the Combine last year and brought 2 panels of them into the room and had these conversations. And when I talked to them, I asked, one of the questions I had was, is the money going to run out? Do you even think about that? Is it something you care about? And generally speaking, the answer was no. And I don't think you write this book if the answer is no for you, Ethan. I think you're thinking about what's next and is the money ever going to stop? And how much money is it going to take in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? All those kind of things. Should people in the business stay in their lane, or should they be thinking about, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is sustainable or not? I mean, what's your take on that?
Neil, it's such a great point, right? And I think if you stay in your lane in this area, you might get run over, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the danger. And so I don't agree with that approach. That's kind of why I wrote the book, and that's why I've taken the views I have. Cash over cap's the name of the game right now, right? And partnering in that process should be a major task of any GM with that thinks they have discretionary authority, right? Like if you're a DPP with an escalated title, that's wonderful. But if you're trying to take a leadership role as a GM, and you got to be a partner in that process. Cash over cap doesn't scare me as much as most. I would say I'm used to building teams with little resources compared to competitors, and the gap between full revenue sharing and the big cash over cap teams now is smaller than what I was used to. But you have to maximize that area as much as possible. You're not setting up your organization for success, right? I mean, I'm an evaluation guy first and foremost, but my time around Mike at the third team has been immensely valuable for me personally in that area. He's such a cap expert, right? And in terms of not only being aware of where the money comes from, because I think that's a great point for you, of like, you got to know how sustainable is this, right? Especially the donor money, right? And this is an area, higher ed in this country right now is struggling, right? Donorship in the academia world is dropping significantly. And like, those are all things I talk about in the book and need to be monitored. But not only where does the money come from, but how to develop and cultivate it, right? And maximize it. And creative mechanisms to stretch budgets and economically engineer outcomes for, like this is what we do all the time in our consulting for our clients to make sure, like, hey, when you give this player this money, are you getting the outcomes you want from that, right? In terms of language and structure. So I think you're so right. You can't just sit and say, all right, where's the money? I'm going to allocate it. Like, that's great. We all love to play fantasy GM and have $20 million to spend on a roster. But I don't think you're doing your full job if you're not a partner in the process.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so and we're going to dig into all this, and it may take the full 2 hours. You said you've got 2 hours. Now I'm wondering if that's going to be enough time. But before we go in that direction, Ethan, speaking of sustainable budgets, all I have heard for the last year was, well, things are getting a lot tighter. These head coaches are going to have a lot longer rope. Okay. And then we get to September of 2025, and we are sitting here with 4 P4 vacancies. Why is that? Why are we looking at, oh my gosh, where are we going to get the money? And then we're going to hand Sam Pittman almost $7 million to go away. How do you reconcile those two things right now, Ethan?
Right. 2 + 2 shouldn't equal 5, right, Neil? Like,
I
that
wouldn't
doesn't
think
make
so.
any sense. I think you're spot on. And to me, it's all because of the changing organizational needs of leadership within college football. And this is half of the first part of the book, right? Budgetary demands are certainly a real deterrent. And I think we will see some schools future proof against that in new contracts as they're given to this cycle of coaches and executives. But the overwhelming need for professional grade, organized, strategic leadership is at an all-time high. The democracy we've seen of like, well, the head coach will figure it out. He'll raise the funds. He'll recruit the players. He'll coach them up. Like, no human being can wear all those hats anymore. And you look at the best in college football right now, they're master delegators, they're involved, but they're all aligned, right? And that's a key we talk about a lot in the book. But that having that pro grade organized strategic leadership is vastly outweighs the costs of a buyout, right? And sure that they don't have that money to spend, but what would be worse is being left behind. And so, like, let's raise that money, and we see it now. Like, schools are paying it with departmental funds, which is like unprecedented, right? It's such a need to get that right, and I think that's why we're seeing so much early movement, because they recognize, like, we cannot be left behind. We're getting lapped by our competition.
You talk about that alignment, and I think that's a fantastic one, because again, Neil and I, we talk about it all the time. At the NFL level, it's got to be the head coach, GM. Some teams, that owner has to come in there. Again, you start talking about going down the staff. Like, again, it's not, hey, we're going to have an offensive philosophy, a defensive philosophy. Like, it's all got to be lockstep, and that it's becoming, to your point, much more important in college football, where again, if you want to say the Nick Sabans of the world that run everything, again, that's not sustainable, because when you put every egg in that basket and then have to move on, again, you're talking massive buyout. Again, the Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M buyout, which again, just that contract doesn't get signed anymore. So per NFL model, to a degree, because there's lots of them that are heavily leaning one way or the other. Does that model where, hey, we're only going to pay 70% of kind of what the past was, but we're going to have it basically, the head coach is going to get paid less, the GM is going to get paid a little bit more, and we're going to have a third tripod leg over here that's going to be really important too. Is that the model you're starting to see, and maybe why if you want to call a larger than life Sam Pittman, who is the face of that program, you do choose to go that direction at Arkansas?
Yeah, I think to answer your questions, yes, right? At the end of the day, and we talk about this at the book, like, everybody's trying to adopt the pro model right now, but nobody really knows what that is. Like, that doesn't mean just hiring someone and giving them a GM title and throwing them in the room with your sitting head coach.
Yep.
Like, that doesn't create alignment. Like, if you study the NFL over the last 20 seasons and you split leadership into kind of three categories, and this is a case study we do in the book, only 2 of the last 20 Super Bowl champions came from a head coach and GM that weren't aligned. And what I mean is a shotgun wedding where the owner hired both. They'd never worked together, or it didn't come from the same system. And that's the Rams with Sean McVay and the Seahawks with Pete Carroll. You had about 2 Hall of Fame coaches there that made things work, right? And great collaborators. So unless you have Nick Saban, to your point, Sean McVay or Pete Carroll, good luck making it work without alignment, right? If you want to study and adopt the pro model, that's the pro model of success, right? And we haven't really seen that adopted in college yet. And that's kind of what the book is showing everybody, is like, hey, if you want to adopt the pro model, here it is, right? And that's one of the things we talk about. But I think, to your point, we're slowly getting there in a kind of roundabout way, Rodrik. Whether it's fully embraced in alignment, whatever the organization looks like, whether you want the GM on top of the head coach, whether you want the head coach on top of the GM, it doesn't matter. They just got to be aligned. Like, you look at what Kansas City is doing right now. The head coach runs the organization. Brett Veach GA'd for him, basically, in Philly, and learned everything he knows, and they're great partners, and they've won many Super Bowls together, right? I mean, whoever's on top, it doesn't matter. They just got to be speaking the same language.
Yeah. No, that's speaking the same language. That could go a long way for a lot of these organizations out here, both college and NFL level.
Yes.
If that is fully integrated, and I don't disagree with your point, Ethan, how long until, when the head coach is gone, the GM's gone too? Are we a year away from that, 2 years away from that, 5 years away from that? What's your guess?
I think it's going to take the industry a little while to figure that out. Candidly, I would love to say that, like, in the next 2 years, everybody's going to start. I think that there's going to have to be some failings first of people hiring big name GMs that don't attach to the head coach, and it's like, well, who's on first here? Who's really making decisions? I think they got to learn the lessons that NFL owners have learned over 20 years, from the first CBA to now, right? And even when you go back to when Nick Saban first entered the league, right? I mean, it was foreign to him, and that's where he adopted the DPP. He's like, wow, having a personnel executive is very valuable. I'm going to bring that to college, right? That's what the NFL was doing in the 90s. Like, we haven't adopted what the NFL has been doing in the early 2000s yet. And so I think it's going to take some time. It took the NFL some time. And I think there's a real opportunity for organizations that want to cut the line and do it now to really take advantage and win. But I don't think it's going to be widespread even within 5 years, Neil. I would be surprised.
Yeah, again, it's you. I think about it in terms of the Sean McVay example is an awesome one, and again, it's the NFL. I say it all the time. The NFL is full of exceptions. Every player that's playing in the NFL is an exception to basically every rule at every level. Sean McVay, Les Snead together. Sean McVay is an exception because he is, again, his mind, the way he operates, the leadership, him and Les Snead. And again, I think about what Miami tried to do with Mike McDaniel. Incredibly intelligent. Again, it's like, oh, well, they had the exception. Maybe we have the exception too. So again, if you want to talk about throwing another, wrench into the gears to slow that process down, it's when the exception has success, Sean McVay, somebody else is going to try to replicate it one way or another.
Absolutely. In my mind, Rodrik, I won't name names, but there's a lot of college programs that come to mind doing things right now that align to what you just said.
Yeah, again, everybody wants to grab the exception.
All right. So again, it's probably too late to say this, but before we really dig into the revenue sharing part of this, let's go back to coaches for a minute. Let's say, having been a GM yourself, Ethan, kind of the vanguard there, if you were a P4 GM right now, your head coach just got let go. You've got a 30-day window when players can enter the transfer portal, no exceptions, what have you. Simultaneously, you're having high school commits that are looking in other directions. What would be your strategy for keeping your players during those 30 days that are critical to the program?
Yeah, and I empathize with anybody in this position, right? Because you're probably gone. Like, let's just be candid, right? You're doing this for the greater good of the kids, and you're doing it for the program because you're probably not going to be there. And
Probably so.
I've been around somewhat of an adjacent situation, right? To me, it's all about your ability to build relationships with the players and educate them on the pros and cons and appeal to their sense of what is best for them. Right now, today, with how early in the season it is for the programs that have had coaching changes, I think leaving a program now likely hurts your stock on the open market as a player rather than helping it. Like, your tape is your resume. We all know that. And at the end of the day, it is harder to land a new highly paying job with self-imposed gaps on your resume, right? Like, you've decided to not work. Why, right? You can raise your stock. I look at Virginia Tech players, Arkansas players right now. You have an opportunity over the next few months to raise your stock. And unless you're Jamar Chase and your stock is really high, it would behoove you to take advantage of that. So I think you just got to educate them and say, hey, look, I'm not saying this for me. All right. I'm not going to be here, right? Most likely. Like, you look at the DPP GMs that have survived a coaching change, and you're really looking at just Ohio State, right? The precedent aside from that is none. So I think you got to accept your situation and take it with grace and use that to your advantage to help educate those players on really what's best for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no easy answers, that's for sure. All right, let's move into kind of what's going on out there related to the portal, NIL, and revenue sharing, et cetera, et cetera. The D1 FBS Oversight Committee, I think this was announced yesterday, has recommended a 15-day transfer portal window from January 2nd to January 16th. That is an incredibly fraught time in college football for the portal to be open, in addition to a few other things that are going on like the CFP. What are your thoughts there? Would it make sense earlier? We also, of course, have enrollment that's got to take place and all these kind of things. And I think there's only a handful of schools that are on quarters and most are on semesters and what have you. What are your thoughts? If you were the czar, would you move it earlier? Would you make it later? Would you leave it where it is?
Yeah, Neil, it's fascinating. This has been such a topic of debate, and there's no right answer, right? Because I was at a quarter school for many years, right? There's so many challenges with how early we start class versus semester school, right? In terms of having a later portal, like, we wouldn't be able to even get guys in. I do think there's an opportunity to potentially look at the season calendar and try to decouple where the playoffs are in the calendar and get it a little earlier, right? You talk about, I think Dan Lanning has a great proposal. I've actually been saying this behind closed doors for many years. Like, why is week 0 not week 1, right? There's games on.
Good.
The NFL
Get rid of week 0. Thank you.
Yeah, why was not everybody playing? And the answer is, well, there's not students on campus. Well, at quarter schools, we didn't have students on campus till week 6. So it's reality. And I think at the end of the day, you can start creating different monetization scenarios and out of conference play with what you do to alleviate that. Hey, maybe there's not the great student body here on campus. To answer your question though, Neil, I think this is probably an ideal time, on the calendar, all things academic concerned. I think this is good. I think having one portal in particular will really change acquisition dynamics in a positive way. But to me, the biggest aspect of this, and it's not being talked about much, and I go into this a lot in the book, is the fact that the cap year resets in July, right? So it's so far away from when players are signing in January, and it creates these odd accounting scenarios where you have to go through an entire season with basically an open cap ledger, or a closed cap ledger where you can't pay anybody that you sign in January until July. It's one or the other. And the order is all off in relation to the season. It should not go new cap year, then season, then free agency. Resetting the cap calendar to match the portal opening would create a much more effective system. It's what we see in almost every professional sports league, right? They reset the cap year right before free agency, not 6 months after. And hopefully that comes in a move to collective bargaining if that ever happens. But to me, like, that's where, if I was the czar, Neil, like, that's what I'm saying is, like, can we change this, please? Like, make the portal whenever to match whatever, but let's tie the accounting to when that opens. And I do think that moving the season up by even a week would really help. Like the 10-day window thing, like the fact that the national championship game is going to be played on January 19th this year, and then players have 10 days to transfer. It's like, why do we have a portal window if 12 teams are going to not be a part of it? Like, that's so backwards. And then the 30-day coaches rule. Why have a portal window? And I've talked about this online. Okay, well, my coach gets fired to end the season. I can enter the portal now. So every recruiting department in the nation has to start looking at portal guys in terms of like bringing them on their actual campus. Now it is a dead period. They did change this, which is good. But like recruiting them, getting on a call, like that has to start December 1st because there's going to be so many coaching changes at the end of the year. So many players are going to be instantly available. And if I'm them, I don't want to wait for January because all the money's there. Like, I want to be a first mover to the market. And we see this all the time in free agency, right? In NFL free agency, like the first movers get the premiums, right? Because I have the need today. And once I fill it, right, supply and demand shifts. And so it almost like behooves players financially to be on teams where their coach gets fired so they can get the market earlier, which is backwards. Like, why do we have this 30-day window if the portal in free agency needs to be in January? And so, like, why can't we tie any? And I get there's legal precedent, but like, this is stuff that has to be ironed out in collective bargaining. Cap calendar, availability of players coming in at different times, because it doesn't solve any of the pain points that programs actually have, which is that they always have to be on to recruit, right? And to your point, Rodrik, like, you can't have Nick Saban do it all if he has to coach in the national championship game and be on the phone with 10 transfers, right? And he can't prep for round one of the bowl game or the conference title if on December 1st, 35 kids enter the portal that they're interested in. And they have to stack rank and prioritize and keep them warm, but they can't send them into a contract until January. Like, whoa. Like, you see why the need for a GM arises. There's a lot of issues, and a lot of it stems to the fact that there is a collective bargaining, and we're making these rules in patchwork with every court case that occurs.
You've used the term now several times, that collective bargaining. And again, it's one of those, I've heard good arguments adamantly for it and adamantly against it. And I think there are really good arguments on both sides. It seems like to have collective bargaining is the only clean way to ultimately legislate and get some of this stuff through without, just running into hurdle after hurdle legally that you're going to face. Is collective bargaining the only way? Is there a way around it? Is that going to be the, ultimate answer that's going to get us to a spot where you don't feel like college football is broken?
I think you're probably right there, Rodrik. I'm sure someone much smarter than me has some great way to solve it. But to me, like, that is the cleanest, most professional grade, organized way to solve it. And I certainly don't have all the answers, but I do think that would be a major step in solving some of the issues we just talked about, right? Like, that's all mandated and collectively bargained with the NFL Players Association. And so there is no confusion for how teams operate right now. And I think we're exiting an area of complete Wild West, but there's still so much freedom for like what I want to put in a contract, right? Well, this school's compliance said it's okay. This school's didn't. This conference wants this in the boilerplate. This doesn't. We have so many different legislators right now and governing bodies. Like, how are we supposed to put a product together that is enjoyable, right? Like, it's luckily college football is so great that it's doing it in spite of all this, right? It's such a wonderful sport, but hopefully that this can get all buttoned up and it can continue to grow and maximize.
Yeah, there's a lot of people watching a lot of games and following college football with a clothespin on their nose, because again, that's in some ways it is the only way to, again, look at some of these situations and not want to turn your nose up and turn it off. Because again, we know, again, it's the NFL has done it. They shoot themselves in the foot and people still follow them. And arguably they're doing it with the Super Bowl now, and we won't even get into that. But again, it's college football now too. It's such, the game is huge. People love it. Then you add in your alma maters, your allegiance to your colleges. But again, a lot of people are going along, and it's, begrudgingly following it, and going to continue that for so long. Again, until something gets settled, you will lose a percentage each year if something doesn't change. And again, whether it's collective bargaining and all the additional stuff that's going to bring, that becomes another really fun process for getting collective bargaining all sorted out across the country.
And in addition to that, like, everyone inside the industry is going to pull their hair out in the process, right? Like, why don't we just get away so that we can have some guardrails and this is fun and engaging and clear for everybody.
Even I think it's come time for me to thank you again for joining us, because we're only asking you to solve college football in the space of a 45-minute podcast, and the hits keep coming, because the next question I have is, we're already seeing some of these blue blood college programs who are making lots of money. We all know that. Who are having staffing cuts, okay? And they're doing things that big business does all the time to save money so they can spend it in different ways. Do you think $20.5 million annual is sustainable? And if so, I guess, regardless of how you feel about that, do you see private equity getting involved in college athletics? And to me, that's the third rail. I don't want to put words in Rodrik's mouth, but he and I think have different perspectives on that. I think private equity is, well, let's just let you answer the question. How about
that? Yeah, this is another area I discuss in detail in the book, but I certainly think Power 4 programs are going to be able to keep up with the demands. I think 20.5 million annually, and then how it's expected to grow and escalate is sustainable. And I do think the cap recalculation years are certain areas that programs need to be aware of, right? In terms of capital strategic investing and really smart cap allocation planning, right? Like there are going to be bump years that you can get ahead of and plan and backload deals to potentially behoove yourself for success there. But you're right. Blue blood college programs are making staffing cuts. I do think that revenue sharing is going to become a first order need for these programs, and it's going to be so important in like a day one install piece for any AD, rather than viewed as just another new line item, which is what it was early. They're like, well, how do we find 20.5? It's no, the answer isn't how do we find 20.5? It's all right, we're spending 20.5. What else are we spending, right? You're going to have to reimagine your budgeting. And there's going to be a blast radius to that, especially in operational spending for programs, right? Over the financial fringe. Like we've seen schools like Texas Tech and Louisville cut Alston awards, right? And I think that's honestly really smart, because that's all cash that counts against your cap. And it's great to give everybody in the athletic department an Alston award, but what is more valuable for the athletic department as a whole? To do that or to have a left tackle? Because you can sign a left tackle with that amount of money, candidly. It's interesting seeing some of the strategies, right? Like Texas A&M has come out and said, we're going to give scholarships to full scholarships to everybody, like no more walk-ons. We're adding hundreds of scholarships. That's great, but that's taking $2.5 million out of their salary cap, and that's the carve-out amount. It can't go up any more than that. But taking $2.5 million out of 20.5, that's a significant chunk every year. Again, you talk about not only a left tackle and some of the other things you can do with $2.5 million. And so those are decisions. I think some schools are going one way and some schools are going another. And really depends on, do you think player 1 through 22 is more valuable than player 23 through 105, in today's world? And these are all topics we kind of dive into more in the book. There's some major advantages to be gained in having these conversations and reimagining your budgets in a way that's like, how do we align what the department's doing to what is going to serve our interests as a department, which is the football program winning, right? Because 85% of the revenue comes from football, but football is the only profitable sport in this country. Men's basketball is not profitable, right? Now, North Carolina makes $25 million on basketball. That's great. But and we talk about this in the book, more programs than not lose money on college basketball. So it's a great sport. It's a huge sport. Like, college basketball is wonderful. But if I'm an AD, I need to be like very aware of that reality. Like, if we're big in football and big in men's basketball, we're having success, like, did the numbers and accounting actually reflect that of your institution, right? And, I love other sports, but like that all has to be reevaluated. And, I kind of defend other sports pretty strongly in the book and talk about Stephen F. Austin canceling their women's bowling team, yet their football team lost $20 million last year. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So like, I'm not pro football just because I'm a football guy, but the accounting makes sense of like, real prosperity comes from winning football in the P4. And I think this is where, and talk about this a lot organizational strategy wise in the book, everybody thinks this AD is like the owner of a team. I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're the GM of an NFL team, because that's what you have to realize is they own the budget. They're the president and the GM together. And now whether they self-subjugate themselves out of football operations and just become the president and the business arm, that's great. Like, the chancellor's the owner. They're making any capital decision in terms of like, hey, we're building a new building. We're like all the stuff that owners do in the NFL. And then like, all right, we're going to make a coaching change. Like, that's all chancellor level duties, president level duties. And the AD is the day-to-day operator of like, how do I make sure we have enough money to win and allocate? Like, I know so many GMs across college football, my personnel compatriots, that like, yeah, I'm the GM, but I don't even know how much money I have. Like, that's not it. There's no GM in the NFL. It's like, yeah, I don't really know what my budget is. Like, what are we talking about, right? So to answer your question, you got to marry all those concepts together, and it's complex.
Okay. Now, Rodrik and I talk about in this podcast a little bit about how we talk about P4. Really, there's a P2 and then another 2 and then the G5. All right. Are the ACC, I mean, let's talk. We're all friends here. Are the AC and the C and the Big 12 going to be able to keep up with the Big 10 and the SEC as currently stands with regard to recruiting and budgeting and all those kinds of things that we're used to as part of the college football landscape?
I think parity is going to increase over time as a result of programs being able to use departmental funds to pay players through revenue sharing. The answer to your question, in my opinion, is yes. I think the ACC and the Big 12 teams will keep up if they find creative ways to punch above their weight. Where they won't keep up, to your point, if it's just about money, no, like, they're getting crushed in media rights, right? And that's probably going to continue, because that's a fan base, that's a brand that takes time to build and cultivate. That's years of winning, right? That doesn't just happen in one playoff run. But I do think the competitive opportunity for a head coach and GM to step in and transform a program and win a national title is wide open as it's ever been. Because instead of it just being fundraising and recruiting's arm race to win a national title, now strategy to maximize production within constraints is a competitive factor too. Like, we look at Clemson and how long it took for them to build to a national championship level. That was the old program build approach, right? It takes a decade. I don't think it takes a decade anymore. You have the ability to completely control your destiny now and flip the script on your program, right? This is a central theme of not only my book, but our advisory offerings at the 33rd team. Like, we've seen it already. This year set a record for the amount of schools that signed a 5-star recruit. Like, talent is going places it's never been before. It's going to Houston. It's going to Maryland. Like, that's unprecedented. And even aside from like the stars, right? Like, look at what Indiana has done. They've come in and completely controlled their destiny. They don't have any more resources than Purdue on paper. Maybe they got a little more NIL, but they don't have any more resources than Wisconsin on paper, right? And they've completely flipped it. And that's a credit to their staff, the players they've brought in, and the culture they've established, right? But the game is changing, and you control your destiny now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you look at what Arizona State did last year, and again, being that close to beating a Texas team that a lot of people had picked to go all the way. And again, you talk how close that game was, and the bounce of a football can certainly go the other way. Again, it's one of those things that it's hard to see. Again, it used to be maybe 10 to 15 teams that were going to dominate the top. Maybe it's 5 to 8 now. Again, it's hard to see Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State getting real far from that top. Again, throw Texas in there now, but again, it's that 15 to 25 who all of a sudden it's like, wow, this team gets hot at the right time, stays healthy. Like this now could be that again, the 6th wild card team, 7th wild card in the NFL. That hey, they're hot and healthy at the right time, and they make a run to it, as opposed to what we've gotten used to in college football, where hey, yeah, pencil one of these 5 teams in, bet on them, and you're probably going to come out ahead. So parity for if nothing else, that for college football will be good. And again, to your point about it'll take some time. As that happens, the talent will continue to go elsewhere, and again, we'll see a really good, healthy college football landscape around the country. Which again, that's what we all want, right? We want good, healthy, again, college football that's good for everybody, right?
Yeah, and I think playoff expansion is such a key piece of that. I think you're right, Rodrik. Like you can sell kids on the dream of going to the playoff and competing at the highest level in those leagues now. Like in the Big 12, like realistically, I don't think other than Oklahoma and Texas in the previous iteration of that conference, like good luck selling somebody at the bottom of that league that you're going to be competing for the playoffs in the next 4 years. Now I can sell that vision. Like you're my foundational class. We're going to get you to the playoffs. All we have to do is win these 8 games in league. We have an easy non-con, right? Like you can sell the dream now and people will buy it versus before they saw the same 4 to 6 teams in the playoff every year. And it's like, well, I got to go to one of those if I'm a 5-star, right? And we lived it out here on the West Coast. Like for years, it was like those kids were all going to the Southeastern Conference because like I want to play at the highest level. And we don't see that as much now. Now it still happens. Don't get me wrong. Like SEC football is the biggest going on right now. And there's a big draw in recruiting, but it's not to the same level.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. So Ethan, here's the other question I get all the time from my friends in scouting. How can I get a job with a college team? And my answer is it's going to take a while because we still don't. It's a different model. The coaches are doing most of the scouting if we're really talking apples to apples here. How long, if ever, will we see teams really follow the Oklahoma model where they're really building out the scouting side almost to replicate what an NFL team does? Do you see that becoming the rule, or is that going to remain the exception for the near future?
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to be adopted, right? Like, and the early indications are going to be very much important tests for like how does that work, right? But I felt it even culturally at UCLA. Like when Coach Kelly and I came in, we adopted what we thought was a very pro model and very much relied on us and the personnel staff to come up with opinions on players, right? And it's foreign, right? Like you have a lot of longtime college coaches that aren't comfortable with that, and it got contested in meetings at times of like, well, no, I see it this way. And it's like, okay, well, thank you for that. But like, this is what we're doing. Right. And we've looked at the entire availability of who's available, and this is the best option. Like I see the same things you do, but I have a bigger picture. And so it's going to be a fight, right? And it's going to take time. And, but I think the early examples, like what Jim is doing at Oklahoma is really important. Test that. I also think the optics are important. I think a lot of people are being thrown in with the Oklahoma bucket that aren't adopting the Oklahoma bucket. I think of potentially USC as an example of that, right? Where they have a GM, but like, is that person an evaluator? Are they owning evaluation? I don't know, but probably not. And it's just kind of the conventional model. So it's going to be hard for decision makers and ADs to parse that without really diving into the weeds. Like, does this GM thing work is going to be their thesis. And they're going to look at all these different examples that have very different rollouts of that process. So I think it's going to take some time, Neil, because I think a lot's going to get lost in that shuffle.
Well, during that time, until it gets to where, all sorts out, everybody can go out there. The book is called The Transformation of College Football, right? You can probably read it a couple times by the time we reach an equilibrium. You'll have highlights, you'll have your dog ears. But Ethan, the book is out. Where can people find it? Where can people follow you, reach out to you if they have questions? Where can they get you at?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. It's The Transformation of College Football. It's in the sports law category. You can also find it. It's in Barnes and Noble as well, so you can get it there if you'd like. And my social media is, I'm on Twitter at Ethan Young FB. Reach out to me there. My messages are open, and happy to connect with anybody and talk this stuff, because this is all we think about all day at the 33rd team.
Yeah, well, again, beyond the 30, yeah, I know you guys think about it at a higher level at the 33rd team. There's plenty of us out there that are, just loving football. And, I was messing with, ideas. Dan Lanning and the other coaches start talking about time zones. And I said, hey, so what would time zone conferences look like? Is you pull up a map and start throwing teams out there. And again, it's all the fun to a degree. Again, just, spitballing and throwing this stuff out there. But again, it is a I don't know if we can call it $1 billion business, certainly, that affects a lot of people's lives. And so we are glad at the end of the day that smart people like you guys over at the 33rd team, you specifically, again, writing a book. Again, at some point I've got to write a book, I guess, because we keep having really good, smart people that have written books. Neil's got 3. You've got 1. Like, yeah, I don't have any. I wrote an essay one time, I think, when I was in college. That's where my limit is. But again, college football is fun. It's fun to debate. It's fun to talk it. Reach out to Ethan on Twitter and X, and make sure you pick up his book, The Transformation of College Football. I'd imagine we will continue to hear your thoughts and everything. Are you active on Twitter?
I am. Yeah, I'm back. I'm active. I'm tweeting games. I'm very much back in. So.
Good. Well, make sure you get him followed. Make sure you follow Neil, of course. He is at Inside the League if you're not already. I am at Right Step ADV. Follow all of us. This will be a fun one. I'd imagine, as Neil usually says, you were a good guest, which means we're probably going to invite you back at some point. So be prepared for that. If you have questions, comments, make sure you hit us up everywhere where we are at, Ethan, myself, Neil, and enjoy it. Enjoy football. Enjoy the book, and just keep on scouting. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ethan.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file, folder, storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.